Today I have the mission to talk about the rise of digital assets in Brazil. My idea with you today is to make you understand what this means. Right now, in 2023, Brazil was ranked 9th in the Global Crypto Adoption Index by Chainalysis. Brazil is the only Latin American country in the top 10 of this index. And that means that we not only have consumers adoption, we have also institutional adoption in Brazil and a lot of regulatory support. So for you to navigate this session with me, I'm gonna bring to you where we are now, how we got here, and what's next. Just remember, this is position 9 out of 154 countries. I'm not going to talk about Latin America today, but I just wanted to give you a quick glimpse on some of our main countries with crypto adoption. Of course, when we look at Latin American digital currency, consumers are already using digital currency. We have a 51% share of LATAM consumers that have already paid with digital currency, and we have 33% of consumers that have already paid with stablecoins. I wanted to highlight here the very unique situations of some of the main adopters of digital assets within Latin America. When we talk about, for instance, Argentina, which figures in the top 20 of the global index I just mentioned. Of course, Argentina, and I'm also going to bring here Venezuela. Argentina and Venezuela have struggled for a long time with high inflation. So that means that their currency loses value very rapidly. So of course, for them, stablecoins is a killer use case. Also because they have a hard time accessing foreign currencies such as the dollar. I can also mention Mexico, for instance, which also figures in the top 20 of the index I just mentioned. When we look at Mexico, of course that because of immigration and its proximity to the US, stablecoin remittances are very well as a use case for them. I cannot not mention El Salvador, whose president has regulated Bitcoin as a national currency, as legal tender, but this is a very specific country here. Talking about Brazil, which is the Latin American country with the highest adoption of crypto. Today, here in Brazil, we have 10 million investors in digital assets. And that number is almost the double of the number of investors we do have in our traditional stock exchanges. Of course, Brazilians can say, oh, the Brazilian population is not that familiar with the capital markets, and that's true. Here in Brazil, when we look at crypto and digital assets, of course, we are more inclined to look at them as investments. And that's also because we don't struggle anymore with high inflation that much. We have had some very important initiatives on the payment system here in Brazil. I'm going to talk about them a little bit later. But we do have a very hard time making the capital markets accessible to everyone. So when we look at Brazil, we do have a population that usually invests in savings, fixed income. So when crypto comes to the table and it's accessible to everyone, there's no minimum value for you to invest, and you can get it easily. Of course, it makes it a very well and good use case for digital assets in Brazil. And when I say that we have 10 million investors in digital assets, of course, this is a great number compared to what we have in our stock exchange. But we have a 218 million population. So that means that not even 5% of our population is having access to digital assets. So that means there's a lot of opportunities here. And of course, 4 years ago, this number was way smaller. It has increased 22 times in this period. Oh, last week we had the approval by SEC on the spot ETH ETF, right? This was very much celebrated, of course, and in January we had the spot Bitcoin ETF. Important for you to know that here in Brazil, the first crypto ETF was approved in March 2021. The spot Bitcoin ETF was approved the same month. We were the third country in the world to approve that kind of ETF. Very good statistics as well. Last year, 9 out of 10 of the best ETF performances were crypto ETFs. And we should also mention that in 2018, our regulator, the Brazilian SEC, CVM, had already authorized indirect investment by investment funds in crypto. And most recently in 2022, for those who know, Resolution 175 allowed them to be direct investments by investment funds. And not only that, when we talk about our SEC, CVM, it has been consistently studying, researching, and dialoguing with the market on the risks involved from the boom of ICOs in 2017 and 2018, when they already issued an opinion, and afterwards when they started to issue opinions on the legal nature of digital assets, of tokenized assets, and right now it's where we are. Of course, digital assets are growing in Brazil. This is a number we can bring. It's the last one we have available. So according to the Brazilian Central Bank, in March 2024, Brazilians bought $1.7 billion in digital assets. This was the biggest monthly amount ever. And it made the first quarter of 2024 reach 4.7 billion, compared to way less in the same period in 2023. So, of course, digital assets are bringing the attention to our regulators, especially to the Brazilian Central Bank. So anyone who's dealing with digital assets in Brazil knows about our CBDC pilot. Through our CBDC project, DREX, as we call it, the Digital Real Electronic X, the public sector and the private sector are jointly making what we call a regulated settlement layer for the tokenized economy. So when we talk about CBDCs in Brazil, it's not only about a wholesale CBDC, but it's mainly about this new infrastructure that is going to be important for us to see all these innovations growing in a regulated way. So right now, in the next month, we'll finish the first phase of our CBDC pilot, in which 70 participants from the financial industries, from the financial industry in Brazil were a part. So that means that we have big, small, and medium banks, we have market infrastructure, we have crypto exchanges, we have payment institutions, we have such a diverse group of players from the financial industry working together to make this happen. So for the first phase, we've been testing one use case only, which is the delivery versus payment of tokenized public bonds. And the focus of this pilot has been privacy. And why is that? The Brazilian Central Bank chose to use an EVM-compatible blockchain to build its platform on top of that. And of course, we need to talk about data protection and bank secrecy. So this has been the main focus of this first phase of the pilot. Moving to the second phase, which will start probably around August this year, we're going to have the same participants, but finally they will be able to bring and propose new use cases, new business models, new assets to be settled in this new settlement layer for the tokenized economy. So when we look at this one, we are talking about new business models and also governance. So the Brazilian Central Bank mentioned the importance of course, for a first time now in the second phase, each participant will be able to develop its own smart contracts. But not only developing them will be important, but understanding how to audit and review them before you deploy it on the platform. In the third phase, which will be next year, the Brazilian Central Bank wants to have more regulated entities coming to the place, but not only regulated entities, but also new regulators. So we do have our SEC, as I mentioned, CVM. It's already participating in the pilot as an observer, but from the third phase on, we are looking to have more regulators coming, more assets being transferred, settled in this new layer. So I would say, and I believe everyone here from the financial industry in Brazil would agree with me, that this has been probably the initiative that has mostly developed our understanding of blockchain infrastructure, of programmability, of smart contract development, and it has raised a lot of awareness within institutions, their technical teams, business teams, and technology teams. So if we are building a settlement layer for the tokenized economy, of course, tokenization is a great use case here in Brazil. Our central bank's president, Roberto Campos Neto, is a great advocate for the tokenized economy. He's been talking about how this is where we are moving to, and he's been saying that for a while now. I didn't mention yet, but Brazilian Central Bank and our SEC have recently done what we call regulatory sandboxes, issuing provisory licenses to some companies to tokenize, offer, and distribute these tokenized assets to the Brazilian population. These licenses have been renovated, which means that this has been working out. And of course, this is very important for the regulators, because up until now, we have been working with what we call the regulatory harmonization. But from that experience on, the regulators will be able to understand what kind of norms and rules should be adapted, considering this new technology and infrastructure we're working with. Just as the last information on tokenization, last year, the top 4 Brazilian tokenization companies' offerings totaled around $100 million in real-world assets. And more is coming, of course. I know that I'm talking about regulation a lot, but here in Brazil, regulators have driven the innovation together with us. So we do have a law providing guidelines to virtual asset service providers in Brazil. This law was enacted in December 22, and it came into effect in the middle of the year last year, in 23. The Brazilian Central Bank has been appointed our regulator, and it has recently, December last year, put out a public consultation with 38 questions on staking, digital asset custody, investor protection, risk management, suitability, cybersecurity. So many important questions to the market so that they can understand how should they put this regulation ongoing. We'll have a second public consultation. It will be released anytime now. And right now, with this second public consultation, we'll finally have a first draft of the regulatory framework we've been waiting for so long. It should also be mentioned that The central bank will also look at complementary rules for, of course, foreign exchange markets, which is something we haven't been looking at that much from a digital asset perspective, and it's needed. Prudential treatment, info reporting, accounting fees, and etc. I'll do a brief travel to the recent past here in Brazil in the financial industry. Not a long time ago, financial inclusion and competitiveness were a huge problem here in Brazil when we look at this market. So they were important drivers for legal and regulatory agendas. Of course, we do have, as a lot of the Latin American countries have, a high rate of unbanked or underbanked population. But here in Brazil, not only we're talking about not having an adequate access to a banking account, but also not having access to credit and investment opportunities. So we understood that we had a great need for the digitization of our economy, better products and services through the use of technology. So our regulators understood that the technology could help. So startups, and especially fintechs, were very welcome to help build with the traditional financial market what was missing. Of course, we did have here in Brazil the enactment of our payments law, which made all the restructuring of our payment system. We also had a rise of a very robust fintech environment. We do have a very entrepreneurial spirit here in Brazil, a lot of great developers and business people. And again, regulation. The central bank issued what they call the BC Plus and the BC Hash agenda. With that, we did get to a point where Brazil became a leader in financial technology innovation in Latin America. It still is. About the agendas of the central bank and the main financial technology innovations we've been through here in Brazil. PIX. This one I'm gonna go into more focused on the next slide, but PIX is a phenomenon here in Brazil and abroad. It's our real-time 24/7 payment system. It has had an incredible adoption in very little time. But talking about open finance, so open finance, we started with open banking, as many of the countries did, and then we switched to open finance. That's because we wanted to help customers to get better products and services, more personalized to them. Of course, open finance hasn't had the size of the success PIX had, because there's still a lot to come in the next years, and a lot of understanding by the customers and citizens all over the world on how can they get the best out of this new possibility of sharing your own information with different institutions. And again, DREX and our CBDC. It didn't start with the pilot, of course. The Brazilian Central Bank started experimenting with blockchains a while ago, but specifically looking at our CBDC, before the pilot, 2 years before that, we had what we called lift challenges. So these were challenges looking at, looking at how could we use a Brazilian CBDC for new business models. So the market was inspired to bring MVPs inspired by DeFi. Just a second, I'll have to drink water. So they were inspired by DeFi, trying to understand how to bring these advantages into the traditional financial ecosystem. Talking about PIX very quickly. So, despite the restructuring of the payment system, as I mentioned to you before, in 2002, the country still heavily relied on cash transactions up until 2019. 77% of transactions in Brazil were in cash. So when we have the release of PIX in November 2020, and of course, I'll have to give a context here. We're talking about the pandemic. So COVID-19 helped a lot in what we can imagine was the adoption of this new payment system digitally. So in 3 years from its launch at the end of 2020 till the end of 2023, PIX hit the impressive number of 155 million users in Brazil. So that's really impressive. As of December 2022, 2.9 billion PIX transactions were happening, which means almost a 2,000% growth from 2 years before. The volume transacted last year exceeded $3 trillion. So of course, PIX is a very specific situation. It was released during the pandemic when we were in need for digital payments, but it can also show how regulatory fostering of new technologies can help when you have a population who is eager for new solutions that they are in need of. And of course, we do have a very tech-savvy population. We are huge consumers of social media and telecommunications all over. So this is something our country has. Talking about what comes next, right? So many things comes next. But Jeremy was saying in the previous session, Stablecoin Regulation is coming. If we look at the market in crypto assets regulation from Europe, which is a great inspiration for regulation frameworks all over the world, the stablecoin regulation rules come into effect in July. Our central bank, who's our regulator for the digital asset economy here in Brazil, they mentioned for the first time last week that they're going to start doing an internal planning for stablecoin regulation. And of course, looking at how they would be responsible when it has use cases such as payments and the foreign exchange market. We have some important data here from the Brazilian Internal Revenue Service, which, by the way, was the first one to talk about, to give us a concept of what was crypto assets and what were crypto exchanges back in 2019. So according to the Brazilian Internal Revenue Service, the growth of stablecoins in the last 4 years has been huge, surpassing even the declarations of Bitcoin trading. Of course, we do have a widespread demand for dollars. Limitations on foreign exchange market make it difficult many times to get access to reais. And I'm talking here to dollars, and I'm talking here about a wider population. We have important figures here too. $1.1 billion was the value of US to Brazil remittances of dollars. 95% of B2B payments are processed in dollars. And $120 billion is the total trading volume between the US and Brazil. So when we talk about digital dollars and internet financial system, we have a lot of opportunity here. And we still need regulation to help this drive that kind of innovation. This is my last slide. I just saw I have 1 minute left, so I won't be able to talk a lot of each one of these subjects I just mentioned, but regulatory clarity is coming more and more, and new business models are creating a greater demand for Web3 products and services. We have been testing the technology, the infrastructure. Now we need use cases, more wider use cases. So just to mention a few, of course, on and off ramps, the digital asset ecosystem is growing rapidly. The coexistence between CBDCs, stablecoins, and our own tokenized deposits, which make part of our CBDC pilot. Interoperability of legacy and new infrastructures, but of course also between new infrastructures. Jeremy was talking about cross chains. Traditional finance and crypto ecosystem integration. That's what we're living here right now. That's what we've been doing in Brazil. That's what our regulator is fostering. Blockchain infrastructure and governance, privacy and composability, programmable wallets, programmable money, smart contract development and audits, account abstraction, a very hot topic for us right now, and of course, cross-border payments and remittances. I would say that this is a topic we haven't explored enough in Brazil, and we do need to do it. And finally, UX and UI for digital asset products and services to make it accessible and possible to everyone. I would like to end my presentation today thanking you all and also quoting Dante Disparti, who's Chief Strategy Officer here at Circle. He says this is not really a financial revolution, but rather a financial evolution that we are all part of. So let's be together to make this happen. Thank you.